My name is Ava Whitlock, and I'm 24 years old. This is not fiction or a dramatized fantasy, it's the raw truth of what happened to me and my family. I never thought I would be the last one left to uncover the secrets, or that my own bloodline would try to bury me along with the truth. Please subscribe, like, and share if you want more real-life stories like mine. This story is written and edited by Dark Life Side Diaries. It all started the night my older sister Eliza was found dead in her car, parked neatly in our driveway, engine still running, windows fogged, her eyes wide open in terror like she'd seen the devil himself. The police said it was suicide. My mother screamed and collapsed on the porch, and my father just stood there, still like a stone. But I knew Eliza. She wouldn't take her own life, especially not like that. Something about that night felt scripted, forced, like the scene had been prepared long before she even got in the car. That was the moment I started pulling the thread, and the deeper I pulled, the faster my family began to unravel. We were the Whitlocks, a family of old Southern roots, living in North Carolina on land passed down for generations. Our estate was grand, but our history was rotten. My father, Elijah Whitlock, was the patriarch, a man obsessed with preserving the family name. My mother, Corrine, always nervous, always whispering behind closed doors. There were rules in the house, rooms we weren't allowed to enter, locked boxes, old photos missing names. I started digging. I went through Eliza's things first and found a flash drive buried in a false bottom drawer. On it were voice recordings, Eliza speaking in a hushed tone, documenting things. She had found letters that hinted at deaths no one in our family had ever spoken about. A cousin named Lily who ran away. An uncle named Malcolm who moved abroad but never sent a single postcard. Eliza thought our family was covering something up. She thought it had something to do with our great-grandfather Judson, the original owner of the estate. I listened to every recording that night, and one thing chilled me the most. They're watching me, Ava. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. After that, I couldn't sleep. I confronted my parents, but they denied everything, called Eliza unstable. I didn't believe them. The next day, I went into the basement, a place we were forbidden to go as kids. It smelled like damp wood and mildew. There was an old wine cellar at the back, sealed behind rusted iron bars. I used a crowbar to pry it open and found a hidden compartment under the stone floor. Inside were old journals, brittle and yellowed. Some dated back to the 1800s. They were filled with bloodline records, names, deaths, notes. But not just of family members. There were entries on offerings and purges, outsiders who had married in or questioned too much. It was clear someone in our family had been orchestrating deaths for generations, and they called it preserving the bloodline. I couldn't believe it. It was a cult, hidden in the disguise of tradition. I started photographing everything. That night, I heard someone at my bedroom door. A click. Then silence. I texted my friend Mason. He was the only one I trusted and begged him to come over. While I waited, I sat on my bed holding the heaviest book I could find like a weapon. The door finally creaked open and I flinched. But it was Mason. He believed me immediately, and we agreed to keep everything off digital networks. They could be watching. The next few days, we dug deeper. Mason even hacked into our county's archives and found death certificates that didn't match the stories I had been told growing up. Fires, drownings, sudden illnesses, dozens of relatives lost in mysterious ways. Mason found a name, repeated in almost every death investigation. Ezekiel Crane. He was a coroner in the early 1900s, and later listed as a consultant to the Whitlocks. And somehow he was still alive in a photograph from 1985, looking the same. That's when it got insane. Mason said, "I don't think your family just preserved their name. I think they preserved him." The journal mentioned a keeper of the blood, someone who extended the life of the chosen through dark rituals. We realized Ezekiel might not be fully human anymore, some kind of eternal priest or guardian. We planned to expose everything, but we needed proof beyond documents. We needed him, so we went back into the basement. We opened the lowest chamber hidden behind rotting shelves. What we saw made us both step back. It was a man, or what looked like one, hooked to machines, tubes running in and out of his body. He wasn't conscious, but he was breathing slow, steady. His skin looked like wax. A book was placed on his chest with a blood seal. Mason tried to photograph it, but his phone shut off immediately. I felt cold, like the air had thickened. Then I heard footsteps upstairs, multiple people, my parents. And others, we were trapped. That's when Mason whispered, "There's another way out. I saw a tunnel diagram on the estate map in the county office." We found the hidden door. Behind a wine rack. We slipped inside just as voices entered the chamber. We crawled through a tight tunnel for what felt like an hour, emerging in the old stables half a mile away. From there, we drove to his apartment. That night, we uploaded our findings to a secure drive, locked it, and hid the access code inside. A book in the town library, our backup plan. But before we could go to the sheriff, someone broke into Mason's apartment. They took everything. Laptop, journals, even Mason's backup phone. And they left a note. "Go any further and you'll end up like her." It was written in my sister's handwriting. That shook me more than anything. I knew Eliza hadn't written that. I think they used her hand after death. That was part of the ritual. That's when I realized it wasn't just about history or cults, it was about blood, and I was next in line. To be preserved, to become like Ezekiel. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I was going to burn the Whitlock name to the ground, even if it meant losing everything. The morning after escaping through the tunnel with Mason, I sat in silence, staring at the coffee-stained floor of his apartment while he changed all his passwords and disconnected his Wi-Fi. We knew the Whitlocks wouldn't stop. We had broken one of their oldest commandments, never uncover the root. I could feel it in my bones, that cold, sinking pressure that something ancient had been stirred. Mason looked pale, constantly checking the blinds. That night, we agreed to stay at a motel on the edge of town. I used a burner phone to call. A woman named Serafina, a name I found scrawled in one of the journals, next to the word defector. She answered with a whisper, "You've woken it up, haven't you?" I froze. She knew. She told me she'd once been married to a Whitlock and fled after witnessing one of the bloodline ascensions, a twisted ritual that sealed loyalty through death and rebirth. She agreed to meet us at a church the next day. But that night, as we slept in shifts, I dreamed of Eliza. She was standing in our backyard, barefoot, dirt clinging to her pale toes, her lips stitched shut with dark thread. Her eyes bled black. When I jolted awake, I noticed the motel door was unlocked. Mason swore he had locked it. Nothing was missing except my boots. A message had been left, carved into the wooden table: "Blood must return to blood." The next day, Serafina appeared at the church dressed like a librarian button blouse, thick glasses, an aura of someone who had spent decades in hiding. She took us into a side room and laid out dozens of photocopies, ritual diagrams, family charts, property transfer papers, and the original founding pact signed in 1812. The Whitlocks had made a blood pact with a man named Silas Crane, ancestor of Ezekiel, in exchange for prosperity, land, and unnatural longevity. The price, a soul every generation. A chosen. Your sister was chosen, Serafina said, her voice brittle. But she tried to break the line. She wasn't the first. But she's the first who got close. I asked, and now they won. Emmy? Serafina nodded. You're the fallback. But you're also the crack in the mirror. If you survive, the reflection breaks. That night, we returned to the estate. I had to see for myself what Eliza had tried to destroy. We wore gloves, carried no electronics, and parked a mile away. The property looked empty, too empty. We crept into the barn first. That's when we saw it, an open casket lined with red velvet, symbols carved into the wood, and inside, a dress Eliza once wore to her high school graduation. It wasn't just a shrine, it was a message. They had preserved her memory as a relic. I felt rage rise in my chest. "We burn it," Mason said, but I stopped him. Not yet. We needed evidence. We moved toward the main house, using the cellar tunnel again. Every step felt colder. The house was alive, creaking, groaning, whispering. In the chamber below, we found Ezekiel again, but this time his eyes were open, cloudy, gray, blinking slowly. I stood frozen. "Ava Whitlock," he rasped without moving his lips. "The betrayer's seed," Mason whispered. "He's not plugged into anything. How is he even alive?" But I didn't care anymore. I walked up to him and said, "What did you do to my sister?" His voice echoed in my head. "She refused the cycle. So she became the fuel." Suddenly, I saw flashes: Eliza strapped down, her screams muffled, my parents chanting, Ezekiel's. Hand dripping blood into her mouth, I stumbled back, shaking. Mason pulled me up, but I couldn't stop trembling. We had to leave. But as we turned, a voice from the shadows called, "Leaving so soon?" My father stepped out, holding a candle. My mother behind him, and behind them, a crowd. Family members I hadn't seen in years. Cousins, uncles, aunts, all dressed in dark robes. They surrounded us. "You've been difficult, Ava," my mother said, eyes hollow. "But we still have time." They grabbed Mason first. He fought, but they were stronger. My father pressed a blade to my neck. "We don't want to kill you," he said. "We want to make you eternal." That was their endgame. Turn me into another guardian like Ezekiel. But I wasn't going to be their relic. I screamed, and in the chaos, Serafina appeared at the entrance, holding a flare gun. She fired it into the chamber ceiling wood, and dust rained down, and in the confusion, Mason broke free. We fought our way out, bruised and bloodied, but alive. The estate burned behind us. We didn't stop to watch. The next week we fled to Oregon. Changed our names. But I couldn't let it go. I mailed the remaining evidence to a journalist in D.C. I knew the Whitlocks had reached, but not outside the South. The journalists went dark for weeks. Then, finally, an article appeared anonymously, "The family that fed on bloodlines." It didn't name us, but the truth had started to leak. And I could feel it, the grip loosening, but it wasn't over. Not yet. For weeks after the article went live, Mason and I kept our heads down, moving between small towns in Oregon, always watching over our shoulders. The anonymous leak about the Whitlocks' history didn't explode like I'd hoped. It spread slowly, like whispers in the dark corners of the internet. Some believed it, most didn't, but that wasn't the point. The purpose was to weaken their power, expose the cracks in their legacy, and show the world they weren't untouchable. But the article came with a cost. The journalist who published it, only known to us as A, stopped responding. Her last message was one word: run. That night, we checked out of the motel and drove north through the night. When we stopped for gas in a remote station near Crater Lake, I saw it. A man, mid-50s, white beard, piercing blue eyes, staring at me from across the lot. He didn't move, just watched. I told Mason. When we left, the man followed. Not closely, just enough to be seen, enough to remind me the Whitlocks were still hunting. But why hadn't they just killed us? Why let us run? Serafina had warned us. The Whitlocks don't erase. They absorb. Killing you would mean losing your blood. They want to reclaim it. I didn't understand that then, but I was starting to. This wasn't just about family control. It was about alchemy rituals, ancient knowledge, biological legacy. My DNA wasn't just a marker of lineage. It was a key, a vessel, and they wanted it intact. We ended up staying in an abandoned ranger station Mason found through a prepper forum. It was deep in the forest, disconnected from the grid. We stayed there for 2 months. It was cold, rough, but it gave me time to think. Every night I would dream of the estate, of Ezekiel's milky eyes, and my sister's voice echoing through the walls. "Finish what I started," she whispered in my mind. So I went back through the journals, page by page, word by word. And there I found an entry by someone named Helena Whitlock, dated 1924. She had written of a failed revolt, of others who tried to escape the pact and how their bloodlines were cursed into silence. But one phrase stuck with me: only the Devourer's mirror can break the chain. I had no idea what it meant, but Mason did. He thought it meant that the ritual could be undone not by killing the chosen, but by reflecting the power back onto its source. A mirror, he said, not a weapon. Something that shows them what they are and destroys them in their own image. I asked, and how the hell do we find something like that? Mason stared at the fire. We don't, we build it. That's when we came up with the plan. Not to run anymore, not to hide, but to turn the Whitlocks' own bloodline against them. We created a fake digital invitation coded in the style of their own secret glyphs, embedded in ancient text, uploaded to a hidden dark website known only to bloodline affiliates. It said, "The vessel returns, under Moon's eye." At the cradle, Serafina had told us the original site of the pact wasn't the estate. It was a cave system in Virginia, once used by the Crane family for their earliest rituals. It was called the Cradle. And I was going back, alone. I knew they wouldn't resist the chance to reclaim me. But I wasn't the same Ava they remembered. The night I arrived at the entrance of the cradle, I felt it like walking into a mouth carved in stone. Damp air, silence too perfect to be natural. I wore a hidden recorder in my coat, and beneath my sleeve, a vial of my own blood mixed with a synthetic serum Mason designed using traces from the journals. It wouldn't make me immortal, but if injected during the ritual, it would corrupt the cycle. That was the plan. Let them think they had won. Let them perform the rite. And then destroy them from within. I walked deeper. Lit torches flickered along the stone walls. And there they were, my parents, robed. Calm, no surprise. No anger, just acceptance. The line endures, my father said. You return as you should. I didn't speak. I let them guide me. The chamber was massive, circular, ancient. Blood-stained rock, carvings, candles. Ezekiel was there, still alive. Still breathing, I stood at the center, heart pounding. The chant began. My mother cut my palm. My blood dripped into a bowl. Ezekiel whispered, "We are one." Then I injected the vial. Straight into my own neck. For a moment, nothing happened. Then everything erupted. The candles burst. The ground trembled. Ezekiel screamed not aloud, but inside every head in the room. People collapsed. Blood poured from eyes, ears. My father lunged at me, but disintegrated mid-step. My mother fell to her knees, whispering a prayer. And Ezekiel's body caught fire. Not a flame of heat, but of decay, centuries of stolen life unraveling. I watched his face melt into dust, and with it, the echo of the pact dissolved. The cave began to collapse. I ran. The tunnel behind me caved in. I didn't stop until daylight hit my skin. I fell into the grass and sobbed. Not from pain, but from release. The Whitlock curse was broken. Ezekiel was gone, but the cost was high. Dozens dead. The estate seized by the government. My last living uncle vanished, and my mother, her body was never found. But I wasn't done yet. 3 months passed. 3 long, quiet months after the collapse of the cradle and the death of Ezekiel Crane. The world didn't change overnight. There were no headlines shouting the truth. No national broadcasts exposing the Whitlock's blood. Cult or the centuries-old pact that had cursed us all. But in the silence, something shifted. I could feel it. A weight lifted from my chest that I'd carried since childhood without ever knowing it was there. Mason and I moved again this time to a small cabin in the Colorado Rockies, surrounded by snow, pine, and distance from the horror we'd barely escaped. Every day, I expected to wake up to retaliation. Some hidden survivor, some final trap, but nothing came. The darkness had eaten itself. Still, I couldn't rest, not truly. Because while I had destroyed the pact, the legacy of the Whitlocks still lingered in documents, in whispers, in the terrified eyes of people who had once stood in those candlelit rituals and prayed to the man who would never die. They weren't gone. They were just scattered. And a part of me knew if I didn't finish it, someone else would pick up the pieces. Serafina disappeared shortly after the collapse. I had tried contacting her, but all I got was a note in my mailbox. You did what none of us could. That's enough. Let it be, but I couldn't let it be. I returned to North Carolina under a false name and forged ID. The estate had been seized, yes, but not demolished. It had become a historical property under state protection with limited access due to hazardous underground infrastructure. No one was allowed in, except preservationists. So I became one. I forged the credentials, the papers, the ID, and 3 weeks later I stood on the Whitlock porch again alone. The front door groaned open. The air was stale. The walls hummed. With silence, it was just a house now. No more rituals. No more chanting, no more secrets, I told myself. But the walls disagreed. Upstairs, I found Eliza's old room untouched, sealed with crime scene tape. I stepped in, expecting tears, but none came. Instead, I felt resolve. In the floorboard beneath her bed, I discovered a second flash drive one she hadn't uploaded. On it was a single video file, shaky footage of a secret gathering in the woods dated 6 months before her death. In it, I saw familiar faces, uncles, cousins, and one that made my blood freeze. My mother, alive, kneeling beside Ezekiel, chanting, smiling. The timestamp was after the date she told me Eliza went crazy, which meant she had lied, which meant she had chosen them, which meant she might still be out there. I downloaded the file and left immediately. I didn't tell Mason right away. I needed time to process what I'd seen. That night, I sat alone and stared at the frozen forest beyond the window, wondering if evil ever truly dies or if it simply wears new skin. The next morning, I found a white envelope at our door. No return address. Inside, a single photograph. My mother, sitting in a field of dead leaves, eyes closed, hands folded, wearing the same ceremonial robe from the video. On the back of the photo were 3 words: "The blood waits." Mason begged me to let it go, to delete the drive, to walk away and let our lives begin. But I couldn't, because Eliza's voice still haunted me. Because I had seen too much. Because my mother was still out there, so we prepared. For months, we trained. We built a network of ally survivors of other bloodline cults, people like Serafina who had fled and stayed hidden. We weren't the only ones, and slowly we formed something new. Not a cult, not a group, a reckoning. We called it the Severance. And we made it our mission to track down and erase the remnants of bloodline covenants around the country, one by one. We burned the old books, we destroyed the sacred grounds. We hunted the keepers, and yes, we found my mother. In a mountainside temple in West Virginia, surrounded by others who had survived the collapse. She didn't fight, she didn't run. She looked at me and whispered, "I knew it would be you." And then she smiled. That smile broke something in me. We left her there. We didn't kill her, but we sealed the place. No exits, no food. No light. Let the bloodline rot in the dark it had worshipped for generations. That was 2 years ago. Today, I live under my real name again, Ava Whitlock. Not hiding, not running. Because the bloodline ends with me. There are still others out there, echoes, ghosts, scattered believers clinging to a lost religion. But they're afraid now. And they should be. Because we are watching. And if they rise again, we'll be there, with fire, with truth, with vengeance. I'm not the girl who lived in the big estate anymore. I'm the woman who burned it down. My sister's voice still guides me, and I know she's proud. This story is not just mine, it's every voice that was silenced, every sacrifice that was forced, every truth buried beneath generations of lies. And to anyone out there reading this, if you hear whispers in your blood, if your family guards secrets too tightly, if you've been told never to ask questions, ask them. Break the chain, become the mirror, end the cycle. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories from the shadows. This story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries.